So, first of all, Glenn and I'm Todd Cranston-Cuebas, and Glenn, turn on that video, bud.
There we go. And
Yeah.
I'm Glenn Todd. Sorry about that.
Hey, yeah, we're going to be talking to you today about job hunting in this really bizarre world that we're in today. 2020 is just insane. And, it does impact things quite a bit, when you're looking for new positions. And a lot of people are finding themselves, you know, in unfortunate situations. Companies are, that were hits last year are suddenly finding they can't really do that well in a world where people don't and can't be near each other. So, again, we just wanted to share some advice on job hunting. And again, we're always open to answering some questions. We also have we also have a YouTube page, TNT Jobcast. That's for Todd and Todd. And if you look at our YouTube channel there, we have a bunch of videos, and some of them go into much more detail on each of the sections we're going to cover today. But what we're going to do is we will provide a full slide deck. Okay, it'll be a PDF document, but we are going to stop sharing right now because we'd rather just talk to you face to face, so to speak. Okay? Good. All right. So first of all, there are a couple of things we always like to cover. I would say that a really, really important thing now, if you're looking for a new position, I don't care if you're a new grad, I don't care if you've had a lot of years of experience, and Glenn and I have been doing this for about 30 years. So trust me, when it comes to like looking at resumes and everything else, we've done it a billion times over. But it's really important when you start looking for a new position to think about your foundation, right? And I would really recommend, even if it takes a couple of days or a week, to stop and really just think about what are your goals, right? What kinds of things are you trying to accomplish in your next position? If you've had work experience, it's really important, I think, to think back on what was your best job and why? Why was that your best job? What made it really stand out in your mind?
Absolutely. And the inverse of that will be your worst job, right? You want to be able to juggle and really utilize the time that you have to no one wants to be in a situation that was bad. You want to take the time that you have now, especially if you're in the market, you're job seeking, you're looking for that ideal situation. Find something that you enjoy doing. So that way it doesn't necessarily feel like work. So really focusing on that foundation and building that foundation. Think about just some of your strengths. What are some of your strengths? What do you do very well? What are some things that may need improvement per se? And also, what are some of the things that you're passionate about? You really want to incorporate that into your job search.
And, as was mentioned in the previous discussion, maybe you look back on your best job and it could be because you were given opportunities to grow. You were constantly given opportunities to take on new challenges, new projects. You were given training materials, whatever it may be, or it could be the people. It's as simple as that. And then that tells you a lot about the culture and the environment you want to be in. But it's very important to look at your strengths and be very honest about that. Where are the areas that you, right now, you can show up and bring to the table to a company? And again, everybody wants to say that they can learn and pick up new things, and that's true. It's just that employers nowadays are really sticking very strictly to requirements. So the more you can align what you have in terms of experience and knowledge, specifically what they're looking for, and you can demonstrate that, that's your strengths. Use it.
Absolutely. So we're going to we took the opportunity to talk a little bit about building your foundation, which is very important. You want to make sure that you have that time, you reflect, exactly you want to do, what you want to get into, because jumping into that job search, getting into resumes and LinkedIn is daunting. It's a very, very, very long, difficult, drawn out task. So you want to make sure that you're in the right mind frame to really tackle those challenges. So let's really get into the bulk of it, right? Let's jump into resumes and let's talk a little bit about, why resumes are important.
Yeah. One thing I would just mention before we jump ahead is, again, try to think about all the things that impact you, whether it's a mental, right? Mental issues. Can think about what gets your head in the game emotionally and spiritually and physically. Get sleep, a lot, a certain amount of time that you're going to make, a concerted effort to look for a job, treat it like a job. And again, all of these factors will really help you keep a cool head, because you're going to submit a lot of resumes and you're not going to sometimes hear a lot in return. But when you get those hits, they should be targeted and you should be excited.
Totally agree.
Okay, so looking at resumes, go for it, Glenn.
All right. So the number one reason why we say resumes are very important and why we really want to take a lot of time and emphasize on making sure that we craft a perfect resume. And again, this is from our eyes as recruiters. We go through resumes all day long. We see applications all day long. That's about 85, 90% of our day, multiple hundreds to close to thousands in a day. So you can imagine we might have a little bit of experience when it comes to this. But the reason why we put a lot of emphasis on resumes is because your resume speaks for you when you can't speak for yourself. So when you get that first opportunity with somebody in an organization that you want to be a part of, you want to make sure that you have a flawless resume so you can get ahead of the pack.
I think another important factor with this whole thing is that you might be surprised. I mean, Glenn mentioned that we do look at a lot of resumes, and we do, right? But if you had to guess about how much time that we have to look at a resume before we make a decision as to whether we're going to move forward or dig in deeper and learn more about you, it's going to be 20, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's about it. So you've got about that much time to catch our interest. If you do, we'll keep looking, right? So first and foremost, you want to align, you look at the job requirements, and that's where you got to do your research, right? Look at those job skills and knowledge, what you need to know, and you tell us in the easiest way for us to find it, that your skills, knowledge, and experience align with the requirements for the position you're applying to.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. And then also just consistent work history. You know, you want to make sure that you don't necessarily try to stay away from gaps. You want to make sure that the structure is very easily to read. It makes sense. It's concise. Do you have an upward career trajectory as well? Those are some of the things we want to look at. And if you do, for some reason, have a gap in your resume, make sure that that's explained. Don't leave it up to us to assume what that gap might be, because every recruiter, everybody in talent on our end is going to think differently. So you really want to make sure that you can have some of those things checked off.
Yeah, and along with skills, knowledge, et cetera, again, remember that you want to actually use as many different ways of representing your skills and knowledge as makes sense. I mean, you don't want to pepper your resume with a million keywords so it looks like it's all doctored up, just a little pop up in a search, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'll give you an example. I'm looking for graph database engineers right now. And I can tell you probably about 20% of the resumes that I look at do not have the words graph database anywhere in there. They'll have Neo4j, they'll have Cypher, they'll have Neptune, they'll have a bunch of other words, which are good, but they won't even mention the word graph in there. And yet, obviously, based on everything that they're doing and all the technologies that they have, they're using graph databases. So don't make it so hard for us to find you, right? Don't hide if you're trying to look for a job, right?
Totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And then also one of the things I'm a big fan of is making sure you can make that connection, right? If you can connect with the other person on the side of that resume, you're probably going to get an instant callback and you're immediately going to move up, you know, that list of the applications that we're going to get, even if you're passive. So one of the things that I'm a big fan of is just putting some of the things in your resume that motivate you, right? It's all about making that human connection. What are you passionate about? What motivates you? Let us know why you're applying for this job. You want to be as strategic as possible. What are some of your thoughts on that, Todd?
Yeah, no, I agree. And motivation actually is very important to us. I mean, we look for that when we do our first set of interviews with people. And look, I mean, motivation can cause changes in your career and cause you to shift and adjust what you're doing. So, I'll give you an example. If somebody suddenly is in New York working in this company, it's a great fintech company, and the next thing you know, they're working for a startup in San Francisco, and they left that fintech company in a very short period of time, right? Well, why? Is it because you were motivated just to leave? Was it because the company was acquired? Give us an idea of what motivated you to make such a significant shift. And again, we're not asking about your personal life. That's your personal business. We don't want to know. But if you decided that fintech wasn't for you and you really wanted to do consumer to consumer work, okay, you can do that. If it was because the company had an acquisition and there was redundancy and you had to make a decision, so you decided to move to Silicon Valley, great. Tell us that. Give us some sense of why there's a shifting and what's motivating you in your career.
I totally agree. And that really makes me put an emphasis on having that objective in your resume or having that professional summary. You know, that lets us know a little bit about you. That everyone has a story. So really utilize that space to your advantage. I know we go back and forth on the length of resumes, and we'll probably get into that. But again, I definitely think that's something that can speak a lot of volume. Again, this is your first opportunity to connect with somebody. You want to make the absolute best first, oh gosh, what's the word I'm thinking?
Impression.
There you go.
Well, look, I mean, you're right. And the thing is, when we say get this stuff into us and tell us a story, the summary is where you can tell us a story.
Mhm.
Use that space appropriately. Give us a little bit of a sense of why things are happening, what you're passionate about, what you're motivated about. It's cool. It helps us. You never know what's going to connect with us, or you never know what's going to connect with one of your interviewers or your hiring manager, but your maybe future boss, right? You could be the state chess champion, whatever it may be. Get it in there if it's interesting, because you may not know that, that your hiring manager of the future is going to be like a major chess fan, right?
Right.
And also skills, right? What about skills? Where should they be? I mean, we
Yeah,
can debate
I
about that,
definitely
but
think that, and this is something that we see quite often. I'm a fan of having the skills at the top,
yeah,
especially when we're having discussions and we're talking to recent college grads or interns. First thing they like to do is get that education right at the top. From our eyes, we're assuming that you already have the education. So to us, again, you want to really think that we have 30 seconds to scan this resume, to scan this application. So let us know exactly who you are and what you can do and what you're good at immediately, so we can already, get you aligned with one of the opportunities that we're working on. So a big fan of getting those skills up to the top. And then also I'm an even bigger fan of listing as far as ranking them of your overall level of proficiency, your level of expertise. What are you really good at? Are you advanced? Are you novice? Are you intermediate? Are you a beginner? Let us know.
yeah. And it's good to put literally skills in order of proficiency. Just tell us that and lay them out for us. Now, again, if the order of proficiency may not match what you actually want to do, if that's the case, make that clear as well. A summary is another good place. I'd start with a summary and then go with skills right below it. That makes the most sense to us. And again, if sometimes people will say, C, C++ is one of the strongest things because this is what I use most of the time in university, but what I really want to work on is whatever, right? And maybe they went to a code camp and they're doing something completely different, but they can't claim to be as proficient. That's cool. Just tell us what you want to do. Also, length. We
Yeah,
argue about length a lot.
I got a good one for you. That length, right? That's definitely something that we kind of agree on. We can't really agree on all the time. Me personally, if you can get your resume on one page, that's perfect. I don't necessarily want to see longer than that. If it gets to two, we can work with that. But anything longer than that, I'll pass.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't care all that much if it's 3 or 4, as long as it makes sense. But you should be able to get it done in 2. But it's not going to kill me if you do, as long as it makes sense and it's not just filled with a lot of filler. Okay.
Right.
And another thing to think about is just the formatting itself, right? We do this thing we call like the squint test, right? Where if we're looking at a resume, we should be able to just squint our eyes and know without even reading any of the text that this cluster here is job 1, this cluster here is job 2, this is job 3, this is where I see the titles, it's consistent, here's the years that you worked there, here's the skills that you used, clearly, easily laid out in a way so that as our eyes are passing through, we are just rapidly picking up that information. I know we're asking for a lot, but the fact is if you give it to us, it makes our job a whole lot easier. And that gives us more time to make that decision because we're now actually getting information faster. And if we like what we see, that's when we start really digging in.
Got a question for you.
Yeah.
So what about if you come across a resume and you see, this is something I'm pretty sure you see because I see it relatively often. Let's say I worked for a big company or I worked for a big system or I worked for, high trajectory systems. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, no, it means nothing, right? And that's a thing is that don't use terms that are relative, right? If large is large, but if it's at Google, it may be really small, right? So, you just have to use real numbers. Any place that you can read in your resume where it's the next logical question is how many transactions per seconds, how many, whatever's per whatever, right? Give us some numbers. If another example for new grads is we had some people we were talking to recently where they said, I was one of 8 interns selected to do a presentation on this particular topic. That's far more impactful than I was selected to do a presentation on this topic. It tells me that you were a select person in this many people, right? So again, give some details, right? Or if something was improved by a certain percentage, tell us that. Lay it out there. Also, no errors. You don't want typos. I mean, personally, I could care less. I mean, if you've lined up on the skills and everything else, if you have a typo in there, I'm not going to lose my mind. But there are hiring managers out there who really, really, really dislike typos and grammar, butchered grammar. They, you know, it's a real turnoff to them because it's almost like a sign that you didn't bother to do your work, and it's somehow reflective. I personally don't care, but I mean, I'm all about skills and experience. But you should clean up typos. I mean, or anything like that. We got grammar checkers. Use Grammarly and figure it out. Okay.
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
So what about, because we're a big fan of tweaking. Do you think you should tweak your resume? I think that goes back to doing your research, but also the reason why I asked that is because we have environments that might call one particular technology multiple things.
Yeah.
For example, we work at Ancestry.
Mhm.
So we use React as a framework, right? Some people might refer to it as React. Some people might refer to it as React.js.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts about that and incorporating that into a resume?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm just tell me again. What was it that you were asking about with that? I just
So
lost my train of thought there for a sec.
in regards to your buzzwords and
Ah,
key,
buzzwords. Yeah, yeah,
every
yeah, yeah.
company uses different
Oh,
buzzwords.
yeah. Mix them up. I mean, the thing is, if there's like Kubernetes and it's, you know, you can use the abbreviation for Kubernetes, spell out Kubernetes. Like I said, use it in all the different forms you can. You want to get that in a way that we can search it and find it. Just always, but again, you don't want to fill your entire resume full of nonsense either. And I would take out all of these skills and things that you touched once, right? Unless you really, it's something that you really have some hard skills in. Don't just fill it with anything you've ever touched or any project that was the smallest thing you ever did. And that also goes for each job section, right? Tell us the most important things, your day to day. If you give us a whole huge list of everything you ever did in that job, we're never going to know where the bulk of your experience lies.
Yep, super, really, really, really good point. So in essence, what we're saying is you really want to focus and cater your resumes toward the application. So that's why it's important that you do your due diligence in finding out your foundation, learning more about what you are, who you are, what do you want to focus on, and utilizing your strengths to your advantage. So definitely utilize the internet, right? Search, research. And every application that you put in, make sure that you have a resume that reflects that particular application.
If you have to switch bullet points around to emphasize some things, don't lie, but do it if it makes sense. Because you may have multiple sets of skills and you're just slightly emphasizing one or the other. But again, like Glenn was saying, read the job description and details. Look for engineers in that company that you want to apply to, and they'll list what they're actually working on, right? So you shouldn't have a hard time. Look for other jobs that have been posted for a long period of time for that company, and you'll be able to see kind of the technology that they're running on and see what makes sense for you. But again, the generic do everything resume is difficult.
Right. So, we're really big on making sure that you craft and you critique your resume to be very job specific. What about your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, that's tougher, right? Because your LinkedIn profile, one of the issues with it is that it isn't something you can easily tweak and change every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is where going back to that foundation really comes into play. Don't think of LinkedIn so much as an online resume that just happens to be static. Instead, think of it as kind of an online presence that you're developing. And it reflects your interests, your goals, what you post about, the kinds of things that you're liking when you're on LinkedIn. If you put articles up on LinkedIn, groups that you join, consider that as kind of again, more of a reflection of your online presence. And that requires, again, that you have a good foundational understanding of what it is you want to do. You're going to have to pick in this case. You can't just throw everything you've ever done out there. People want to know who you are. So make that an opportunity for people to get to know you.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Totally agree. Now, especially just a quick nugget. This is kind of basic, right? But if you're in the market and you're actively looking, there's a few things that you can do to let everyone know that you're actively looking. Recruiters like myself, recruiters like Todd. There's a tab where you can say that you're open to opportunities. You'll be surprised how many people are actually open to opportunities, but are afraid to actually check that tab because they think that somebody internally is going to find out. And no one wants to know that you're letting the people on your team know that you're actively looking, right? But
Yeah.
that's not the case.
No, we can see a lot using LinkedIn Recruiter, so we can see if you've checked that box off, right? But if you're in our current company, we can't, right? So there are some safeguards against that, right? Also, again, you have friends on LinkedIn, you have other people you've worked with in the past. Reach out, let them know, right? Go to your buddies, right? Let them know you're available. let them go ahead and put the word out to people that they'd be interested in. But I would recommend that you don't have people throwing your resume all over the place. Instead, I would recommend that if they see an opportunity they think you'd like, they can refer you or they can give you a name that you can contact. You just don't want to have your resume floating all over the planet. That is not what you want to do. And do leave breadcrumbs too, right? Look at your profile and give us links to your GitHub repositories, right? Your personal websites, articles you've posted, presentations you've done, communities you participated in, whatever it may be. Because again, once we're hooked on you, we're going to start wanting to dig. So the easier you make it, if we don't have to start just trying to find your GitHub, right? Tell us, just give us the links.
Right, totally agree. And then also just respond back to the messages. You'll be surprised how many people leave unread messages in your queue, in your messages. I do it all the time. I try to stay away from it because again, that could be your potential opportunity. Set alerts when people are looking at your profile or when new jobs are presenting themselves. Really take advantage of LinkedIn because it's a phenomenal tool and it's a lot of things that you can do to kind of help separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah, and do look at who's been, it'll let you know if somebody's looked at you and figure out who they are. You'd be surprised. Some of them are recruiters from companies you'd love to work at, and go ahead and contact them. Be a little, gutsy and use your connections. And also make connections. If you see people who have an interesting background at a company you'd love to work, introduce yourself. Introduce yourself to an engineer there, and introduce yourself to a recruiter. I would not introduce yourself to like the chief operating officer, the CEO, the head of all people operations. No. Focus again on somebody kind of midish tier, reach out and have a chat.
Absolutely, because a lot of people don't realize some of the tools that we can utilize to our advantage from the LinkedIn Recruiter tool. And what I mean by that is you can go from the bottom of the pack to the top of the pack immediately just by making sure that you have connections, first or second or third level connections with people within that particular organization. That's going to move you to the top. If you follow that particular organization, when something pops up, your profile is going to immediately post to the top. And then if you're in a particular group, like we mentioned, we use React from a framework. If you're in any React groups and we're looking for people that follow Ancestry, that are active in the community as far as groups and might have connections, you're immediately going to pop up in our search.
Yeah, I mean, we can actually search by group. We can search within anybody who has a connection to our company in some way, shape, or form. But also, if we're not using LinkedIn Recruiter, just traditional LinkedIn, LinkedIn doesn't give you everything that matches your search ever. It basically calls a list of thousands of people and it picks people it thinks would be best for you based on the connections you already have. So it looks at your set of connections and says, okay, who would these people want to see? And then it prioritizes the list that way. And Glenn and I have actually tested this where we've put the exact same search terms in. He'll get a completely different number of responses. I get a totally different number of hits, and they're in totally different orders. And sometimes people are completely missing or absent. So LinkedIn doesn't actually give you what you ask for. It gives you what it thinks you want to see and what would be best for you. Not always great, but you can get yourself to the top because if you have connections to me, even if they're distant, you're going to go to the top.
Absolutely.
Okay?
So we're getting toward the tail end of our presentation of our time. So one of the things that we really want to leave everybody with is we're recruiters, right? We really want to pull back the curtain. We really want to pull back the layer and let you know just some of the things that you can do or also not do to kind of be ahead of the rest and be ahead of the pack. So we have a quick segment that we call what grinds our gears. I don't know if anyone's a fan of Family Guy, but that's kind of where we got it from. And these are some of the things that we will probably avoid, right? So I'll start it off. A master of everything. When you jump in an organization and you see a resume and you absolutely see something that's, I'm a master of Java, I'm a master of JavaScript, I'm a master of Python, I'm a master of Spring, I'm a master of REST. What are you really good at? Let us know exactly what your strengths are.
Right. Exactly. And that's it gets down to, again, don't show us everything you've ever done. Show us the things that are pertinent to our job. And then the people who apply to everything, right? We can actually see what you've applied to anytime you apply to a job on a company website. Trust me, we all have tools to do that. So there are people who apply to everything from the, chief people officer to the, to the security guard position, to the head of engineering. I mean, you name it, they apply to 20 positions at a time. We're not going to talk to you because you obviously have no idea what you want to do. So be careful. You can apply to one or two things if they're appropriate, but you don't want to go beyond that. the other thing is identical job descriptions, right? Glenn, explain what that is, because that's bizarre.
Yeah, I see that all the time. You'll be surprised. And pretty much it's, let's say if you worked at 5 different companies, but everything in your responsibilities, in your duties, in your day to day is literally copy and pasted into every single opportunity. I'm a big stickler for that. That grinds our gears. Stay away from that. Again, that really goes back to doing your research. That really goes back to looking at your foundation and getting everything collected and making sure that you put the necessary information in the right spots.
Absolutely. Years of experience too. A lot of times people have overlapping years or years that don't add up. And they'll, in the summary, they'll say something like, engineer with 12 years of experience. And then there's just no way you can add up the years, and they overlap. And then sometimes they start and stop at different points. And then there are gaps, and there's nothing you can do that comes up with more than 5. So what do you do with that? Right? There's nothing we can do. It kills us. So sometimes, again, we just have to go past that resume because it's internally inconsistent. Okay.
Well, that being said, I appreciate everyone for listening to us. I appreciate everyone for having us. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, to reintroduce ourselves, I'm Glenn Todd with Ancestry, Senior Technical Recruiter.
Yep. I am Todd Cranston-Cuebas, also a Senior Technical Recruiter at Ancestry.